Stop feeling stuck. Reinvent yourself and become a brand new you. You have to master the art of personal transformation. Life moves quickly. A handful of decisions you make in your early life will impact your future. Choices have consequences, and the ones you made in the past might lead to a regret-filled future. Maybe you thought you had made the right decisions at the time. You did what you were told to do. You followed the rules and played it safe. You were told the path to success was stable and went in a straight line, only to find there was no gold at the end of the rainbow. Now you're feeling stuck. You look at your life in the present and think, is this it? Call it a crisis or a fork in the road, but something must change. You don't want to live the rest of your life on someone else's terms. You're not getting any younger, and you look back at the spent years wondering what you could have done differently. You look in the mirror, and you don't see the person your youthful self thought you'd become. The dream career never panned out, the book never got written, and the business never got started. The ripped body, full bank account, and freedom to have amazing experiences have never come. What you do have is a past riddled with mistakes and a situation that needs changing. So, what do? You reinvent yourself. In this book, I'm going to show you how I went from depressed, addicted, and broke to living out my dreams of becoming a writer and building a business. I didn't just change. I got rid of my old self. I want the same for you. To become a brand new person, you need a different approach. Instead of carrying all your baggage with you, past mistakes, limiting beliefs, and an identity that doesn't belong to you, you're going to start over. You won't need to swear to yourself that you'll become super motivated and accomplish all your dreams. You won't need to rely on willing your way to success, no matter what. Does the pull yourself up by the bootstraps method work? Sure, it does. But for many, it falls short. As humans, we have a lot of psychological and emotional weight we carry with us, and it's hard to stay motivated with it strapped to our backs. This book will help you accept the past, unravel your limiting beliefs, and wipe your slate clean. I learned how to reinvent myself through hundreds of hours of trial and error, reading, and connecting with smart people. I failed more times than I can count, but the transformation I've made in my life still shocks me. If you told the person I was a few years ago he'd be a published author with his own business, he wouldn't believe you. I want the same for you. Together, we're going to unlearn the patterns that led you to this point and relearn ways to find success based on your terms and no one else's. This book isn't about making $1 million. It's about becoming the person you were meant to be and living the type of life you were meant to live. You'll discover methods for identifying and reframing the subtle stories you tell yourself that hold you back. After this fresh start, we'll work on ways to identify what the new you wants and come up with a plan to help you achieve it. Most importantly, you'll have a process you can use and reuse. After reading the book, you'll have the confidence to try new ventures, and you can build layers of success throughout your remaining life. You could wait. You could put reading this book off, like most people would. What will your life look like a month from now if you don't change? How about a year? How many years have already slipped through your fingers? I've had many times where I decided to put my life on hold. I waited 6 years before penning my first word. I waited another year before writing my first book. I don't have many regrets in life, but I do wish I'd discovered this process sooner because by now, I'd be even further along. You don't have to spend the rest of your life waiting and wishing for a better one. You can act now. I have made this book brief and simple so you can get to the heart of your issues, resolve them, and move forward as a new person. Don't be that person who fails at their New Year's resolutions every year until they die. Be that person who takes a chance on him or herself and does what it takes to rewrite their story. In this book, you'll read strategies I've learned and implemented from psychologists, Stoic philosophers, the Buddha, billionaires, and other people who know what they're talking about. If you don't trust me, put your trust in the endless hours I've spent navigating life and finding a degree of success. I used to be so lazy I wouldn't get out of bed unless I had to go to work. Now, I wake up in the morning and write 1,000 or more words almost every day. I'm a new person, and I'll continue to create better versions of myself, all the while building a legacy. You can completely flip the script on your life. I know it because I almost guarantee I was less motivated than you are. If I can do it, you can do it. Don't wait another minute. Jump into the material and begin the reinvention process right now. In many ancient societies, the phoenix was a symbol of strength and rebirth. It lived for hundreds of years at a time. When it started to feel weak, it would arrange a stake for itself and burst into flames. After being consumed by the fire, the phoenix rose from the ashes and started a new life. In a way, you can be like the phoenix. You can start over and live a new life. You can let the fire consume the old you and rise from the ashes again. Reinventing yourself is different from simply setting goals or trying to change. See, we try to change our behavior and make our circumstances better, but it doesn't work until we become the type of person who can make those changes. We can't become the person who can make those changes if we're stuck in the past, ruminating on our mistakes, and trying to rewrite what's set in stone. The past teaches you about yourself. The mistakes you made in your past can help you avoid repeating them in the future. Your past can act as a lens that foreshadows what your life might be like if you continue to live the same way. In an ideal world, we'd all analyze our pasts, move on, and improve ourselves. This doesn't often happen because we've created an identity around our past selves. Up until this point, you've collected experiences and memories. You believe who you are as a person matches these experiences. You think you're a professional, a working stiff, a failure, destined for mediocrity, or one of the endless labels we attach ourselves to. You can't help but pick up these subtle cues from the world, not only telling you who you are but that you can't change. Most people move through life clinging on to their assigned identities. A select few realize something's wrong and do something about it. I'm not here to judge. I don't know your dreams and desires. I can only ask about them. Are you satisfied with the person you've become over the years? Do you have the nagging feeling you've been duped into becoming something you're not? If you want a fresh start to live your life instead of someone else's, you can reinvent yourself. You can get rid of the parts of your life that don't suit you. You can unlearn what you've been taught about life up to this point and start over. There were versions of myself that couldn't do what I'm doing now. I'm nowhere near perfect. I still have baggage. I still screw up all the time. I still have worries, doubts, and fears. But I'm not the kid who cared about nothing more than weed, booze, and women. More on him later. That person was incapable of disciplining himself, doing work of any kind, or being positive in general. He was lazy, depressed, and quick to anger. To be reborn, he had to let go of certain people, environments, beliefs, and last but not least, his identity. You've been told the key to success is always pushing harder, being motivated, and trying to force yourself to make your situation better. But what if the you are right now simply can't do it? As strange as it sounds, we can be strangers to ourselves. Trying to improve your life without self-awareness is like trying to hit a target blindfolded. You keep trying to make changes, but you get sidetracked because of underlying beliefs and mindsets you don't even know you have. This book will show you how to shine a light on yourself, learn from your self-examination, accept yourself, and start over. I want this book to be different. I want it to feel real and stick. To do that, I'm going to do my best to be straight with you and avoid the common pitfalls most self-help books fall into. The problem with self-help books come and go every 15 minutes like the subway train. Most people read them once, get a jolt of motivation, and fail to follow through with what was taught. How am I going to write something that stands out among the infinite shelves of self-help material? I'm going to do my best to do the opposite of what most self-help authors do. I won't act like I'm perfect or assume you'll be perfect. I won't name names, but you know the type. He wakes up at 4:53 a.m. every day. He steeps his tea leaves at the perfect temperature to extract the essential antioxidants. He reaches all his goals within the predetermined time limit, never slacks off a single day in his life, and seems to have no emotional problems whatsoever. I'm not that guy. I'm just a guy who likes to write and happens to be interested in helping others help themselves. I've learned about reinventing myself only because I've made so many mistakes and was stuck, depressed, and lost. I regress sometimes, and I realize I'm not immune to falling back into bad patterns. Since I know I'm incapable of being perfect, I'm not going to expect you to be either. I'm going to talk to you instead of talking at you. Self-help books sometimes have a way of making you feel bad about yourself if you aren't motivated 100% of the time and don't always have a positive attitude. Life can be quite shitty at times. Regardless of who you are or what you've done, a storm is on its way. You're either in the thick of a storm, on the tail end of one, or on the brink of a new one. That's life. It's also where reinvention comes in. You will mess up, which is exactly why you'll benefit from the ability to start over. I'll expect a lot from you, just as I expect a lot from myself, but I won't expect everything from you. I won't operate in should or must. Perception is powerful. Even though our individual perceptions seem like reality, they're not. They're just our own versions of what's real. I wrote this book because I want to help you figure out what you want. I'm not going to tell you what you need. Telling people what to do based on a set of morals, rules, or guidelines doesn't work. One of the best ways to get through to someone is to appeal to their self-interest. In the book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, billionaire business owner Charlie Munger tells a story about a manager working at a company who finds out one of the employees is doing something unsavory. He alerts the owner, telling him it is his moral duty to reprimand or fire the employee. The employee in question hasn't violated any laws or regulations per se, so the owner ignores the manager's plea. However, the employee's actions end up being so egregious the entire business crumbles. It ruins the owner's reputation and he is blacklisted in the business world. What lessons can we learn from this story? Per Munger, the owner would have been convinced to make the right decision if the manager had appealed to his self-interest. If instead the manager had brought up the fact that the employee's actions would not only destroy the business, but the owner's hard-earned reputation to boot, the owner would have seen the gravity of the situation and done something to fix it. I'm going to treat you like the business owner in that story and try to appeal to your self-interest. You're reading this book because you want to change, but you're in your own way. I could tell you to follow your dreams because it's your duty as a human being, or I could shed light on the fact that you'll have to live with the results of your action or inaction. Instead of telling you what you should or shouldn't do, I'll tell you what likely will or won't happen. If you hate your job but fail to apply for a better one or start a business, you'll continue to hate your work. If you don't change your situation in areas like your health and relationships, they'll continue to trend in the direction they're pointing at now. You know this. You can extrapolate what'll happen if you stay the same. It just seems distant. When the future isn't here yet, you can always put it off. But life moves in a way where you can find yourself looking back at the time spent and wonder what happened. The process of reinventing yourself involves taking a hard look at what you already know. We all know how to get in shape, how to increase our knowledge, and how to make strides in pursuing something we love. But knowing isn't enough. When you take a serious look at what will or won't happen, you start to feel the gravity of the situation. When you truly see where your future is headed, you'll be inspired to change. It often takes continuous reflection on your future and on your death for your situation to hurt bad enough to want to change. Throughout the book, I'll give you techniques for reinventing yourself, but anything I write is just a suggestion. I'll bring you to the water, but I won't force you to drink. I won't operate in good or bad. People define good and bad based on their culture, experiences, and worldview. For example, take procrastination and leisure. If you read a common self-help book, it'll talk about how to be more efficient, productive, and how to tackle your goals with intensity. They'll also tell you that procrastination and laziness are evil and should be avoided at all costs. Are procrastination and leisure bad? It depends on who you ask. In a commencement speech to the University of Beirut, author and philosopher Nassim Taleb commented on his rejection of advice about what's good and bad. I hesitate to give advice because every major single piece of advice I was given turned out to be wrong, and I am glad I didn't follow them. I was told to focus and I never did. I was told to never procrastinate and I waited 20 years to write my first book, The Black Swan, and it sold 3 million copies. Nassim educated himself through voracious reading and only took with him what he thought was good. I encourage you to do the same. People celebrate leisure in many cultures because it allows time to think, spend time with friends, and rest a tired body. Americans prize productivity and efficiency because the culture promotes them. Realize the relativity of opinion and only take what you need with you. Instead of operating in good or bad, I'm going to try to operate on what you want or don't want to happen and provide suggestions to help you get where you want to go. I'm going to talk about patterns most of us share. You can use these patterns to find what isn't working in your life and start the type of life you want to live. Not the one your spouse, parents, society, or even I want you to live. I respect your dreams and ambitions. This book will be nothing more than a tool to get you closer to them. It will not define them for you. I won't blow smoke and sunshine up your, there's a book called The Secret, which talks about manifesting the things you want to happen in your life through visualizing them. I believe in the power of visualization, but I don't take it as literally as the book does. When you create a vision for your future, you start to see opportunities you would have missed, or you notice things you wouldn't have without visualization. But The Secret, in my opinion, preaches literal manifestation. It says things like put a picture of a Lamborghini on your wall, and you will soon have it. It's a nice thought, but you and I can both guess at how well that strategy works. Many people criticize self-help books for overpromising and under-delivering. The book touting its ability to help you make 6 figures in 6 weeks doesn't quite pan out the way you thought it would. The 10 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom ends up being a bit more complicated. I won't guarantee a foolproof process for anything. I'll share what I've learned and practiced in my life with the hope it makes an impact on you. The truth about self-help books is that most people fail to use them and act. When it comes to motivation, change, and success by several definitions, most people don't rise to the occasion. I wrote this book for the few who will. I don't want to pretend like we live in an ideal world. Don't get me wrong, we're living in the best possible time to be alive, but it's still not perfect. The playing field has become more level. You have more opportunities now than ever, but nothing worth having comes easily. The Stoic philosophers said we had to learn how to live. This book is meant to aid you in doing that. We don't need any more books making false promises. I promise this will be a book you can reference when you're feeling stuck. I sincerely believe I can help you. I truly believe you can become anyone you want and do anything you want. But I can't do it for you. No one can. How to use this book? Suspend your judgment. It's in your nature to read books like this with your horns up, ready to pounce on any idea you think is flawed. It's easy to be a cynic. It requires no energy to be skeptical or negative. Changing your life requires an open mind. You bought this book hoping there would be a few pieces of insight that would make it pass your S. Detector, but I bet you'll learn even more if you turn it off. If you make it all the way through this book and found it wasn't helpful, you can get your money back, write a 1-star review, or do whatever you want. Until then, take what I say to heart and let the ideas sink in. If there's an exercise at the end of the chapter, do it. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine, but a lack of action is part of the reason you're in your current position. Give the book a chance. More importantly, give yourself a chance. The first stage of reinventing yourself involves defining who you are in the first place. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you paused and thought to yourself, how the hell did I end up here? I have. The thought popped into my head when I was living in a dorm room with less than $100 to my name at the age of 24. And again, when I woke up in a jail cell awaiting a court appearance. And when I looked in the mirror to discover that I had miraculously gained 20 pounds. Each of these moments is a reminder of what happens when you fall asleep at the wheel. In terms of your own life, you end up in the ditch. You scratch your head because surely you shouldn't have allowed yourself to get here. It seems odd that we end up in ruts or situations we don't want to be in, even though we have the power to change them. It seems like our own self-interest is overridden by something more powerful, something insidious. You definitely weren't born with the idea of pursuing work you don't enjoy, chasing after materials that might be meaningless, and playing it safe. These ideas come from somewhere. You cling to the idea of you so tightly, all the while failing to notice or remember that the idea of you is nothing more than a figment of your imagination. Let me explain. Why your personality is like a quilt. My father was born in Nigeria, a country in West Africa. My mother was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but her parents were from the American Deep South. My father came to America in his early 20s to go to school. He met my mom, they fell in love and got married. Then they had my brother and me. We grew up middle class. My mom worked as an IT consultant and my dad owned a business. Each of my parents had their own values and idiosyncrasies. My father has been an entrepreneur for most of his adult life. He never took a regular job. None of his businesses ever took off, but he still made enough to make ends meet. And for him, that was better than having to follow someone else's rules. My mom was the prototypical company woman. She earned 2 master's degrees. The only class she ever got a C in was gym. She's sharp as a tack and has always prided herself on her education. Both stressed the need for education in my life. They wanted me to go to a prestigious university and attend graduate school. Even though my father never had a corporate job, he wanted me to have one because he loved me and wanted me to be secure. I had my parents' direction to guide me, but I had the entrepreneurial tendencies of my dad. Sure, he could tell me what I should do, but kids watch what their parents do more than they listen to what they say. Deep down, I knew I wanted to have control over my own life, but I spent a lot of years following the script. It wasn't just my parents influencing me. It was my teachers, mainstream media, peers, and the zeitgeist in general. Each little influence acts like a patch to the quilt that is you. Believing in corporatism is a patch. Nationalism is a patch. Materialism, tendency to eat fast food, ambition, media addiction, and the list could go on forever. They're all patches. Let's say instead of my parents being well-educated, middle-class members of society, they were poor. Let's say instead of having a nice home, we lived in the ghetto, surrounded by violence, drugs, and crime. The patches would be different. Maybe they'd be of the belief that hope was worthless, and that reliance on self-sufficiency, anger, street smarts, or survival instincts were more important. If my parents were billionaires and I lived in the south of France, my patches would be different. Some people like their quilt. The experiences of your life can shape you into a person you're fond of looking at in the mirror, but what if they don't? What if instead, your patchwork of stories and influences has led you to the "how the hell did I get here" moment? Chances are you feel this way to some degree, or else you wouldn't be reading this book. So, what do you do from here? You decide what pieces of the puzzle don't fit. You rebuild yourself from the ground up by using new pieces you discover on your own. That's what reinventing yourself is all about. It isn't about becoming someone else. You're already someone else. Unless you've experienced the type of awareness that leads you to understand how much of a stranger you can be to yourself, you haven't begun the process yet. I want to help you become a person who thinks for themselves. I don't want you to be what I want you to be. I want you to be what you want you to be. But first, let's figure out exactly who that is. We'll start by asking smart questions about who you are right now. What's your story? Stories are powerful. We use stories to share important information with each other. We learn best through stories. The reality you're experiencing right now is nothing more than a set of stories you're telling yourself about the world. When you're born, you're a blank slate. Had you been born in a different location, to different parents, and under different circumstances, you would be different. These different factors play the storyteller role and help you form the script you now live by. Some of the stories are helpful, but many of the stories you've learned about yourself and about the world are at best unhelpful and at worst causing harm. What stories do you live by? Look at the different types of stories below and think about the impact they've had on your life. First, let's start with the stories told by our culture. Entrepreneur and author Derek Sivers equates culture to telling a fish it lives in water. He says, "We're so surrounded by people who think like us that it's impossible to see that what we think are universal truths are just our local culture." What cultural stories have you been told? These stories influence you because they're subtle. You don't hear them once, but hundreds of times in slightly different ways. The American nightmare. I live in America. Odds are you do, too. If not, keep reading anyway, because there's a lesson to be learned from the story of the American dream. The Industrial Revolution was a time of prosperity in our country. The post-war boom left an excess of work to be done, and the need for compliant workers was high. Contrary to popular belief, the school system was created not to educate our youth, but to prepare them to become obedient workers who could work in the factory for hours on end without moving. Then, with the rise of corporatism, the idea of college being a safety net and guarantee of security rose up the ranks in the storytelling hierarchy. After veterans came back from World War II and received their GI bills, they bought nice homes, worked at safe and stable jobs for 40 years, sent their kids to school to get good grades, and those kids went on to college and became corporate workers. The story worked out well for a while. There was a time when job security was guaranteed. There was a time when having a college degree was a safe bet on your future. Now, however, the economic landscape is different. Times have changed. The story doesn't work for everybody anymore. I can't even begin to count how many of my friends and peers felt underwhelmed by their prospects after graduating college. While in school, they worked hard for their GPAs in the hopes that life would be smooth sailing after they walked across the stage. Many of them have found the story didn't live up to the hype, and now they're stuck with a gigantic bill they'll have to pay off. They've been rewarded with a cubicle and an earpiece to make sales calls. I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like much of a dream to me. If you'd asked 18-year-old me why I was going to college, I wouldn't have had a great answer for you. It'd be something along the lines of, because that's what you're supposed to do. A decision that cost me tens of thousands of dollars was made for no other reason than it being the norm. Something isn't right about that. I'm not arguing whether college is good or not. I'm just noting the fact that college being a savior for your future isn't an absolute truth. The story our culture tells us sure makes it seem like one, though, doesn't it? What's worse is the fact that even when the stories we're told don't come true, we have a difficult time facing the truth of this situation. Humans have an amazing ability to rationalize their situation and confirm what they already believe to be true. Once you commit to a certain decision, belief, or way of thinking, it's hard to change, because humans don't like being inconsistent with what they've already committed to. This is called the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias explains why we're tied to our beliefs. It's why two people can argue both sides of a debate and truly both believe they're right, even though that's impossible. Confirmation bias causes us to search only for information that confirms our beliefs and filters out anything that seeks to disconfirm it. Let's say someone spent $100,000 on college and is in debt. Let's also say they've been working for a handful of years, starting with entry-level work and an incremental salary increase. Mathematically, it may not have made sense for them to go to school, after you factor in the amount of money they could have made while in school, interest paid on their loan, and other opportunity costs. If you ask them why college was a good choice, they'd likely respond with one of the following answers: without an education, I'd be even worse off than I am now. If you don't get your degree, you end up flipping burgers. Neither of those statements is irrefutably true, but saying them feels better than admitting your choice may have been a bad one. Years back, I would have said my goal was to find a great job and make a nice salary. The idea of writing for a living never crossed my mind, because it didn't fit the normal narrative. At 18, if I'd told my parents I wanted to try to become a full-time writer, they would have just said, "No, you aren't doing that." We don't like what doesn't fit the normal narrative, even if it's something that might benefit us or make us happy. Going against the narrative means being uncomfortable or facing embarrassment. But it also could mean a better future, a future where you get to live the life you want to live. By you, I mean the person you are deep inside who you lost sight of after hearing too many stories. I'm not here to tell you what stories you should believe. I do, however, challenge you to question them. The stories culture tells us impact us, but they pale in comparison to the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. The two most powerful words in the world. I listened to a speech by the motivational speaker, Joel Osteen, and he said something that stuck with me to this day. He said, "The words you put after I am determine the quality of your life." It's so simple and profound, yet many of us don't realize how much of an impact our internal dialogue has on us. Sometimes, even believing we have positive qualities can keep us from taking the action we need to build the type of life we want to live. Growing up, my parents and teachers always complimented me on my intelligence. "You're bright. You have so much potential. You're gifted." Wow, I'm bright and gifted. You'd think hearing those compliments repeatedly would motivate me and lead to a life filled with accomplishment. Everyone around me thought I'd breeze through elementary and high school, go to one of the top universities in the country, and get some cushy six-figure job as a lawyer or an engineer. Being told how smart I was all the time caused the opposite to happen. I was so tied to my identity of being the smart kid, I never wanted to do anything to challenge it. When it came to a situation that required effort, a situation where I faced the possibility of failure and loss of my identity, I never stepped up to the plate. It was better to be the smart kid with potential than to find out whether the things people said about me were true. Psychologist Carol Dweck tackles this phenomenon in her book Mindset. She found that when kids are praised for their intelligence, it gives them a boost, a special glow, but only for the moment. She also notes that the minute they hit a snag, their confidence goes out the window and their motivation hits rock bottom. If success means they're smart, then failure means they're dumb. That's the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset permeates many of our minds. If you weren't praised for your intelligence, you may have been told the opposite. Studies also found that students who believe they aren't intelligent underperform in school. The way you're taught to view yourself during childhood is just one of the many ways you can form either negative or positive traits after the words I am. If you think you're an underachiever, You'll always be able to find examples to confirm your belief. If you think you're shy, you'll subconsciously act in a way that repels people through your body language and behavior. Once you put a trait behind the words I am, and believe it firmly, everything that happens in your life becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Before I was a productive writer who woke up at 6 a.m. every day to write, I was a stoner who didn't do much but smoke weed and lay around to watch TV. During that time, the actions themselves weren't the major problem, it was the idea that I was lazy. See, there's a big difference between saying you're being lazy and saying you're lazy. The latter weaves whatever negative trait you identify into the core of who you are as a person, and it feels more difficult to change something about who you are as a person than it is to change your behavior. So, what should you do? All this information is great, but you still don't know what to do about any of this. To let go of and reframe the stories you tell yourself about yourself and about the world, you can start with identifying them. It seems easy enough, but some of the harmful stories you tell yourself aren't as apparent as others. They hide in the dark. They're almost invisible. They need to be dragged into the light. So, drag yours into the light. What are the stories you've been told about the way the world works? Here are some common ones. Money is scarce / the economy sucks. Only gifted people deserve success without an education. You're screwed. The only way to make income is through a job. Entrepreneurship is risky. You can't make money as an artist. Thin is beautiful. You must keep up with the Joneses. All authority figures are trustworthy. The news is all true. Being different is bad. Most of the stories you're told by society are fear-based. It has good reason to keep you believing the world is a scary place. Next, let's talk about the stories you tell yourself about yourself. These are stories you learned from other people and through your environment. I'm not talented, I'm lazy, I'm shy, I'm not artistic, I'm right / left-brained only, I'm intelligent, fixed, I'm stupid, fixed, I'm not worthy of love, I'm a phony / fraud, I'm practical, I'm timid, I'm stuck / my position is cemented. I'd take a day, or two, or even a week to really think about these. Take a pen and paper or use your end of chapter worksheet to write these stories down, because we'll perform an exercise to help you deal with them. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." It's uncomfortable to be alone with yourself and think about what lies deep below the surface of your thinking. You might find this process brings a rush of emotions, maybe even some unpleasant ones. You might want to kick yourself or kick someone else, because the influence of these stories is subtle, yet powerful enough to have led your life to the point you're at now. But in the end, knowing these stories gives you the power to change them. How do you change them? By questioning them. When you think about these stories, ask yourself, are they really true? Is the economy so bad no one can succeed? In the connection economy we're living in now, it's possible to succeed in ways that aren't tied to the economy like 9-to-5 jobs are. Are you lazy? I bet you can find examples where you've been highly motivated. Things you're interested in motivate you, and you've gone out of your way to satisfy at least one desire in your life. Finding that example disproves your theory. Once you have all your stories identified on a sheet of paper or the provided end of chapter worksheet, I want you to find an example that disproves each statement. After you've done that, we'll move on to the final phase and flip these stories on their head. How to rewrite the script of your life. What if I told you that a few subtle changes in phrases could completely change the way you feel about yourself? As we discussed earlier, the phrase I am wields a lot of power. We can change those I am statements to I'm working on statements. When I think about the times where I made real changes, it always came down to the decision to begin to work on whatever I once believed was set in stone. I changed my mindset from believing I was lazy to believing I could work on becoming more motivated. It's subtle, but instead of my laziness being irrefutable, it became a challenge to overcome. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take all the I am statements you wrote earlier and change them to I'm working on statements. For example, if you said, I'm not creative, I'd like you to change it to something along the lines of I'm working on finding creative outlets that suit me. I'm a big believer in the power of writing things down. Writing has a way of ingraining what's on the paper into your mind. Also, I'd like you to keep these notes somewhere prominent where you can look at them often. You'll need them for later when we talk about exploring new avenues in your life to help you find meaning and purpose. I know what it feels like to have little hope for the future. I know what it feels like to look in the mirror and see nothing but a person who's destined for nowhere. If I didn't experience such a change for myself, I wouldn't believe it was possible for you. I know your circumstances feel inescapably real. I know you feel the traits you have right now are set in stone, but they're not. You is just a concept, a patchwork of stories that can be changed. Now, it's time to become the you that you were supposed to be, instead of the one you thought you were supposed to be. How to become the real you? What do we do when we try to improve? We look to add. When we try to change our lives, we seek, because we think something is missing. You're told you need to find passion like it's playing a game of hide and seek with you. You're told to get X and feel Y. Get a new job and feel more accomplished. Get a new car and feel like you're wealthy. Get in shape and feel sexy. We've gone over ideas and stories, but I saved the most important hidden message for last. The most subtle and insidious idea in existence is that you're not enough. We've all been led to believe that the key to a better life exists outside of us. The process of reinventing yourself, building a better future, and starting over is realizing you already have everything you need. Your gifts, your passion, and your genius are already in you. Every human being has muscles to some degree, but some are just buried under layers of fat. Just as getting healthy physically often deals with removal, getting healthy emotionally and spiritually is also about elimination. There's nothing wrong with you, but there's something wrong with you, the you the world created, the you that was formed to serve everyone else except for you. Just as a scientist succeeds by finding evidence on what doesn't work before getting to the answer, you'll examine the influences in your life and the decisions you've made that led you to a life you don't want. Soon, we'll let go of the old you. But as Socrates said, the unexamined life isn't worth living. Let's examine. We'll open the wounds, clean them out, and patch them up for good so you can move on to the next phase in your life, the better one. Key takeaways and exercises: you've been influenced to believe and behave a certain way based on stories you've learned about the world in your upbringing. Some of these stories may have been beneficial, but others may have led to you living a life you didn't necessarily want to live. The words you place after I am have a direct impact on you because it's harder to change what you believe is set in stone and wired into your personality if you drag the subtle stories you tell yourself into the light. Examine them and question them. You can learn to see yourself and the world as they really are in your downloadable end of chapter worksheet, or on pen and paper. Answer the following questions. What are some of the patches that led to the quilt of your current personality? How do you think these patches have affected you? What are some of the deep-seated stories you tell yourself about the world around you, circumstances, or reality? Can you find examples that disprove these statements? What are some of the deep-seated stories you tell yourself about yourself, your I am statements? Can you find any examples to disprove these statements? Take the I am statements you just wrote and turn them into I'm working on statements. This will reframe the stories you tell yourself from set-in-stone traits to areas with room for growth. We've reached the end of this part. See you in next part soon. You like this video? Subscribe and hit the bell button to support our channel. Thank you.